Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Retro, and in this video you're going to see a tour of my collection rooms. Yes, rooms. In my previous house I had one room, but in this new house one room simply isn't enough anymore. My 3,500 video games are now in two separate rooms, and in this video I will show you all. However, I will not go into full detail on every game, because then you'll be watching a 1.5 hour special and I can't ask that from you guys. I will make other videos which will have details on why I have certain games, why they are rare, and more information. So this is the overview where you get to see the whole collection. I hope you enjoy watching this, because I sure did enjoy collecting this. I'm gonna start this tour with a quick walk through both rooms so you guys can see how I laid it out. On the left there's 4 cabinets mainly filled with Nintendo, Sega and some AES stuff. Then there's my display cabinets. Here's the PSP one filled with PlayStation stuff. Then there's a display cabinet with all kinds of rare games. The World of Nintendo cabinet, one of my favorite things in my collection. A PlayStation Store display and 2 regular IKEA cabinets filled with either PlayStation 1 or press kits, and to the right there's some Xbox. Then in the next room on the left you have all PC big boxes I have, and those are quite a lot. In the back you see press kits and limited editions, and on the right there's PlayStation 2 and board games. So back to the first room and all the way to the left. Here you see 2 special editions for Assassin's Creed games, both from the Ubisoft store. You saw a World of Nintendo sign, Oddland games here, and this is a cabinet I use for my stuff I haven't organized yet. Then this is the cabinet all about Nintendo. So it's Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Nintendo 64, and as you saw on the top there's also a Neo Geo AES. These are all complete in box Super Nintendo games, and I'd say 95% of these are European. I do collect American as well, but only if they didn't get released in Europe. So these are mainly European boxed games. After the Super Nintendo we get to the Nintendo 64, and like I said before, I consider my Nintendo 64 collection quite complete. There's not really anything I'd want except for some really rare games which I'll probably never have. Then we have 2 more shelves of Game Boy. Game Boy Classic, Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, and there are some really nice games in here, but we'll get to that in the other video. The next cabinet is a mix of Sega and Nintendo. First you see some Sega consoles and some Nintendo watches. Then there's the last bits of Game Boy collection that didn't fit in the other shelf, and of course a Mario statue you see there, and a Pokédex. Then some Game & Watches, and these can be incredibly hard to find complete in box, and I'm quite happy with the ones I have at the moment. Then we get to the Sega Mega Drive, which is the first console I collect for in Sega Land. I don't collect for the Master System or the Game Gear. And I have some Genesis games in here as well, especially ones that didn't get released in European Mega Drive format. Sorry about the twitching with the filming here, but as you saw in the walk around, the room is quite crowded and getting a good angle and good lighting was very hard at some times. I also have some 32X games, and Knuckles Chaotix is by far the most mentionable here. I also have Colibri, but you'll see that one later. Then there's some more Sega consoles, and we get to the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn is probably the only subset of my collection that I consider complete. There are some American-only games that I don't have yet, but I'm not actively looking for anything, so I'm happy with what it is now, and if I find something I'll add it, but not looking for anything. Same goes for Dreamcast. Not really my console, but I do have the nice games, or at least the ones that are nice in my opinion. Then Neo Geo AES, which is one of my favorite consoles to play on, especially the games you'll see later on in my display cabinet. And here you have a bunch of game guides. And I actually use them sometimes, especially the Metal Gear Solid ones. And on the bottom right you see a couple of board games for video games. Even though I have 2 collection rooms, space is always an issue. I'd love to give these display items a better spot, but I simply don't have one. Then we have a PSP store display, which is filled with PlayStation 3 games and PSP games. And I'm a big PlayStation collector, as you know, but PlayStation 3 and PSP I have the essentials. I don't have all the extras that I have on PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. But I really do love the PlayStation 3 and PSP. This is the first of the 2 display cabinets I have in my room. On the top there's a bunch of big box SNES games and 2 complete in box Mega Mans for the Game Boy, and the rest of the cabinet is filled with sorts of rare and complete games. Every game you see in this cabinet is really rare, sought after, valuable, or incredibly hard to obtain. It took me about 8 years to get this collection to where I am now. In those years I've had some amazing deals. None of these games I paid the market price, but still some of these games were very expensive to buy, but they were always worth a lot more. As you can see, the lighting is really hard on this one, but in the special video about the rare games I'll show them to you in more detail. One of the highlights of my video game collection is this original World of Nintendo store display. In stores they used to display the games on hang tabs, but I made some custom shelves so I could fill this baby to the brim with complete in-box NES games. 99% of these are PAL B, but some of these are NTSC as well, like the Mega Man set where I have both the NTSC and the PAL versions. In the bottom of this display cabinet there's one of my most prized possessions, and it's the complete in-box ROB set. It has both big box games, ROB in a separate box, and the deluxe set. Next to the original Nintendo store display is a PlayStation 1 cabinet. I used the top two shelves to show some of the rare games so I can show the box fronts, and the rest of the cabinet is filled to the brim with complete in-box PlayStation 1 PAL games. You can recognize the PAL games from the NTSC ones because the PAL ones have bigger box and a different spine. The NTSC ones are in normal CD cases. In the bottom you see some limited editions or special editions as well, but most of them are in this cabinet over here. On the top you see a Net Geo Rosie and some of the shooter sets that are released for PlayStation 1, and here you see a bunch of regular PlayStation 1 games. All alphabetized of course, because else I'd be looking for hours. This row is complete in-box NTSC games, and most of these are RPGs, and this is the display shelf with some PlayStation 1 NTSC RPGs and some really rare PAL limited editions to the right. These shelves are all about the really rare and really strange PlayStation 1 sets that got released over the years. On top here you see the Nintendo NES M82 store display unit, which they used in stores to show up to 12 different games to their customers. The rest of this cabinet is filled with PlayStation press kits for all consoles and handhelds. To the right you see my Xbox collection, which isn't big, but I consider it complete. I have pretty much every Xbox game that is worthwhile, and every Xbox game that's only released on Xbox, so it doesn't have a PlayStation or GameCube counterpart. So this was my first room except for the big display in the middle, because this is one glass case filled with awesomeness. It has a special Zelda level that you're seeing now, and on every side there's rare games, unique items, and some really special stuff. For instance, this is the PlayStation level where you see press kits, where you see commemorative discs and other rare items, and this is my PC level where I'm really proud of the complete in-box Commander Keen, Doom, and Wolfenstein 3D. In the bottom there's press kits like Ico and The Last of Us, and here in top you see some of the AES games that I talked about earlier, which is one of my favorite consoles to play on. On the Zelda level I have every possible Zelda game you can think of, and here on the PlayStation level there's every rare item you could wish to have in the PlayStation collection, except one thing, the Tekken 2 commemorative disc that I'm still looking for. On the PC level there's the complete Elder Scrolls saga, and there's some other rare stuff and miscellaneous stuff, like these Game & Watches and a shipping box for Donkey Kong 3 on the Game & Watch. The Zelda 3DS XL and the Zelda 3DS, the Zelda Game Boy Advance SP, and in the bottom you have the Jak and Daxter press kit signed by the creators of the game, and some rare PlayStation games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Here we have PC games again with Mega Man 3, which is a rare one, and in the bottom is a PlayStation 1 set that is incredibly hard to find. Some more Game & Watch stuff, and here you have the unique and horrible Zelda games for the CDI, and of course the Zelda Game & Watch. Next up are two press kits, one for Final Fantasy X and one for Final Fantasy VIII, and below that is the Warcraft 3 limited edition for the PC. And of course another press kit, Dishonored. This is the Sega side of the cabinet, and it's the one I've been working on most in last year. It has some amazingly cool games and rare ones like Colibri and Snatcher on the Mega CD. Here's some Zelda stuff again, and here we have commemorative discs for the PlayStation 1, the Tekken 3 one and the Gran Turismo one. Then below that are two rare PC games, Three Skulls of the Toltec and Volfeet, which was one of my favorite games as a kid, and in the bottom is the Sonic Generations press kit. On this last side again we start with Sega with some Saturn games like KO Flying Squadron 2, Panzer Dragoon Saga and Musha for the Genesis. Then on the Zelda level you see the NES games and the 3DS XL version. Below that there's some rare PlayStation 2 stuff like the Tekken 4 tournament version, and then we have more Elder Scrolls games, Battlespire and Daggerfall. And last but not least in this cabinet is the Ni no Kuni Wizard Edition. The next room starts with a big pile of NES and Nintendo 64 boxes. I simply have no room to give these a decent display space, so I had to stack them all on top of each other. It's all different versions with different pack-ins and different fronts. And now we get to the PC big boxes. I grew up without a console and only had my PC for gaming, and I have some amazing memories there. I love the PC and all the games it has, and in this collection I try to have a good mix between the PC games I played as a kid and have good memories of, and the PC games I never tried but are defining for the PC. For instance, I have the Carmageddon games and I have the Diablo games, which I loved as a kid, but I also have the King's Quest games. I never played them, but are great point-and-click adventures, and I love adventures, and I feel that my PC collection wouldn't be complete without those. On top of these cabinets I have a lot of different special editions. You saw some for Metal Gear, but there's a lot up there. Also press kits that are simply too big to put in a normal cabinet. For the rest of the PC collection, as I said, I try to get all the special ones and all the classics. I love my Jazz Jackrabbit, I love Little Big Adventure that you see here, one of my favorite childhood games. I have the Mega Man games, while they weren't as good on PC as they were on console. The Monkey Island games, Mortal Kombat, a game that I played hours and hours as a kid. And these big boxes, they are really special to me because they represent my youth more than anything in my collection. One of the things that intrigues me in collecting big box PC games is the amount of crazy games that got released. On the bottom just now we had Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Gender Bender. Well, I don't see that coming out on a Sega or Nintendo platform. In these last bits of my PC collection you can see that I'm a big Blizzard fan. I have all the Diablo games, I have all the StarCraft games, I have all the Warcraft games. I was a big World of Warcraft fan, but my personal favorite is Warcraft 2, the Battle.net edition. I played that for countless hours and I loved it. These last bits are the PC games that didn't come out in a big box and that I still found worthy to be in my collection, like the Dungeon Siege games and Max Payne for instance. In the middle of the room, taking up all the attention, is a cabinet filled with limited editions for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, Wii, Wii U, everything you can think about. Some of these I bought for my collection and to actually play, and some of these I just bought because they have an awesome set or I could buy them cheaply. At the beginning of my PlayStation 3/Xbox 360 collection, I was destined to get every limited edition out there, but at some point I just had to let that dream go because there are simply too many and yeah, it's just not doable. In the bottom there's also a press kit for WRC Racing. This is where the madness I call my PlayStation 2 collection starts. At some point during my collecting years I had about 20 to 25 PlayStation 2 games and I considered myself done. Well, guess I was wrong. There's about 5 or 6 PlayStation 2 games left that I want for my collection, and that's basically because they're very obscure and very hard to find. Definitely not worth playing, but as a collector I really want them. For PlayStation 1 I have every RPG out there, and for PlayStation 2 I'm trying to achieve the same thing. For the PAL region games I have everything, but for NTSC you can see I only have a couple of them, so I'm still looking for a bunch of them. This is my GameCube collection and I'm missing one of the Pokemon games, and for the rest it's complete. And my Wii collection is missing a lot of games because my cousins have them, they love playing them. These are some of the best press kits I have. On top there you see God of War 3 and Medieval 2. Here are the big box games for the GameCube, and then we have my cabinet of board games. I really love board games, and if you want to collect board games, go to a flea market, bring a couple of dollars or euros and you'll come home with a car full of board games. These are so easy to find, so much fun to play, and also a lot of fun to collect. With a quick overview of my Nintendo 3DS and DS collection we end this video. So this was my personal collection of about 3,500 video games, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on YouTube or contact me through facebook.com/drretromd. Be sure to check out the other videos where I go more in depth.